Marty Mcfly's romp through time makes Back to the Future one of the best movie trilogies of all time. So we here at Cinematica compiled the Back to the Future trilogy in one comprehensive timeline. To make everything digestible, we'll be following Marty's experience through the story instead of jumping around and starting chronologically in the 1880s. Also, we're not covering the Back to the Future cartoon show or the Telltale video game, but let us know in the comments if we should dive into that expanded universe, and make sure to subscribe to Cinematica. Ready? We gotta get back in time. October 25th, 1985. Marty Mcfly's adventure begins when he pays a visit to Dr. Emmett Brown's house that's filled with alarm clocks and Rube Goldberg-esque breakfast-making machines. Eat your heart out, Pee Wee Herman. Doc isn't home, but that doesn't stop Marty from trying his gnarly oversized amplifier. The arguably mad scientist soon calls Marty and asks him to assist in an experiment at Twin Peaks Mall late that night. Marty agrees, then realizes he's late for school and rushes out the door on his skateboard. But he's too late. Mr. Strickland catches him and calls him a slacker, just like his father. After class, Marty and his band audition to play at the school dance, but are just too darn loud. Defeated, he vents to his girlfriend Jennifer in the heart of Hill Valley, Courthouse Square, site of the infamous clock tower that was struck by lightning 30 years prior, precisely at 10:04 p.m. on November 12, 1955. At home, Marty runs into his father, George Mcfly, and George's supervisor, Biff Tannen. Biff totaled the family car, which Marty desperately needed to take Jennifer out of town that weekend. Biff takes no responsibility and bullies the sheepish George into paying for the car damage and cleaning his beer-stained suit. At dinner, Marty's mom Lorraine drowns her sorrows in booze, reminiscing on her quote-unquote innocent youth. She had fallen in love with George back in high school after her father hit him with his car. She felt sorry enough for him to let him take her to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, where they shared their first kiss and fell in love forever. A little pathetic, but hey, that's the power of love. October 26th, 1985. At around 1:15 a.m., Marty meets Doc Brown at the mall and sees his newest invention, a time-traveling DeLorean. I mean, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style? It's all possible thanks to the Doctor's ingenious flux capacitor, along with 1.21 gigawatts of electricity powered by plutonium. Dangerous stuff, so they're wearing radioactive-proof suits. The DeLorean needs to hit 88 miles per hour for everything to come together, so Doc remotely powers the car as his dog Einstein plays guinea pig and is launched exactly 1 minute into the future. But wait, let's back up a second. Where exactly did Doc Brown get the plutonium? Well, he made Libyan terrorists a fake bomb. But hey, what could possibly go wrong? Naturally, the Libyans show up and mow Doc down with machine guns. Devastated, Marty runs for his life, using the DeLorean to escape. Once Marty ramps up to 88 miles per hour, he suddenly whisks past the Libyans, straight to November 5th, 1955, the day Doc Brown inputted because it was the day that he came up with the flux capacitor. November 5th, 1955. Marty, still traveling at 88 miles per hour, finds himself suddenly warped from a paved mall parking lot to an abandoned, sleepy farm and careens into a barn. Marty stumbles out of the DeLorean to greet a bewildered family still wearing the hazmat suit. They figure he's an alien, so Pa tries to blast him with a shotgun. Marty jumps back in the DeLorean and speeds off, taking out one of the property's 2 pine trees on the way. Once he hides the time machine, Marty heads to town to search for Doc Brown so he can get back to the future. He stops by the local diner to find his address in the phone book. While he's sitting at the counter, high school-aged Biff charges in and barks at Mcfly. But Biff isn't talking to Marty. Marty's actually sitting next to his very own father. Marty's curious about just how spineless his father always was, so he tails him for a bit. Well, not only is George a wimp, it turns out he's also a peeping Tom. Marty finds him sitting in a tree spying on Lorraine as she undresses. George slips and falls from the tree into the path of an oncoming car, so Marty dives in and pushes his father out of the way, getting hit instead. When he comes to, he finds himself being nursed back to health by the beautiful young daughter of the man who hit him, Marty's own mother. And she's not exactly being coy. She took his pants off while he slept. Jeez. At least this gave Marty an easy fake name written on his underwear. Calvin Klein. Lorraine gets even more handsy during an awkward dinner with Marty's extended family, including a baby version of his convict uncle. Marty finally decides to dip and rush over to Doc Brown to explain the situation. The doc doesn't believe him at first, naturally. I mean, Ronald Reagan, the actor, as president? Don't be ridiculous. That's like electing a reality TV star. But once Marty tells him about the flux capacitor, Doc's convinced. They go pick up the DeLorean and discreetly transport it back to Doc's garage. November 6th, 1955. Without access to plutonium, Doc thinks all hope is lost. To generate 1.21 gigawatts for the flux capacitor, they'd need to harness the power of something like a lightning bolt. Fortunately, they know exactly when and where lightning will strike. That's Saturday night at 10:04 p.m. Doc can surely finagle a way to make all that work in the coming days. Only one problem. Marty kinda jeopardized his own existence. See, George was supposed to get hit by that car, not Marty. That was the clumsy catalyst that led to them falling in love. Without this, Marty will never be born. He now has until the Enchantment Under the Sea dance on the 12th to reignite the spark between his parents. November 7th, 1955. That Monday at school, Marty tries to convince George to ask Lorraine to the dance, but he's not very successful. Everyone thinks George is a loser. Even Mr. Strickland thinks he's nothing but a slacker. Plus, Biff has the hots for Lorraine, and George can't step on those massive toes. But Lorraine doesn't want Biff's meat hooks. She only has eyes for, Calvin Klein. Seems like Marty will have to get a bit creative. November 8th, 1955. Early in the morning, Marty dons his radioactive protective suit and sneaks into George's room to use his ultra-futuristic Sony Walkman to scramble George's brain with some Van Halen. See, George is a big sci-fi guy, and even writes some himself. So when Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan demands that George take Lorraine to the dance, you know he listens. The next day, George downs some chocolate milk and builds the courage to announce that he is Lorraine's her destiny. It's actually going well, but then Biff shows up. Marty, sensing trouble, trips Biff, decks him in the face, and leads him and his cronies on an extremely exciting chase through the streets. After inventing the skateboard, Marty heroically maneuvers to safety as Biff crashes his car into a truck full of manure. Get used to that smell, Biff. It's a really cool scene, but unfortunately, way too cool. Lorraine's already attracted to Marty, but now she thinks he's an absolute dream of a man. She follows him to Doc's place and gets Marty to reluctantly agree to take her to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. But that doesn't mean he's giving up on George just yet. November 9th, 1955. The next day, Marty reveals his plan to George. He's gonna get a little too handsy with Lorraine in the school parking lot before the dance. After all, his mom always seemed like a prude. She'd never even parked with a boy. George would then come to her rescue and put Marty in his place, sweeping Lorraine off her feet. Of course, that means Marty has to feel up his own mom, but it might be the only thing that can save his existence. November 12th, 1955. On the night of the dance, Marty's plan backfires in the most uncomfortable way possible. Lorraine is more than ready to park with Marty, smoking a cigarette and downing some booze before launching herself at him. Fortunately, she stops herself, reeling in disgust and realizing that kissing Marty feels like kissing her brother. Unfortunately, Biff shows up very pissed off. His goons throw Marty in the trunk of a car as Biff closes in on Lorraine. George shows up to play hero, but he wasn't expecting to see Biff. And yet, he doesn't back down. Biff twists George's arm behind his back, then he shoves Lorraine to the ground. That pushes George right over the edge, and he knocks Biff out with a single, extremely satisfying punch. The dance band freed Marty from the trunk, so he saw the whole thing. But he's still fading from the photograph. George and Lorraine still need to seal the deal with that kiss. The band guitarist, Marvin Berry, cut his hand while freeing Marty, so our hero ends up playing guitar in his place. When some random pencil neck rudely interrupts George and Lorraine's dance, Marty is nearly wiped from existence. But George is a changed man. He cuts back in, kisses Lorraine, and Marty springs back to life. Then, Marty introduces the young 50s crowd to Johnny B. Goode, which Chuck Berry apparently plagiarized, before scaring them off with some 80s metal. They're not quite ready for it yet, but their kids are gonna love it. By the time Marty meets Doc, he has the clock tower set up for the DeLorean. Marty tries to warn Doc about the Libyan terrorists, but Doc refuses and rips up Marty's detail-filled letter. He doesn't want to mess up the time-space continuum, you see. As they're arguing, a fallen tree unplugs the lighting rig. Damn! With only seconds to spare, Doc climbs the tower and Marty hops in the DeLorean. Car won't start, and the cord doesn't have the necessary slack. Damn. But it all works out. Marty starts the engine, puts the pedal to the metal, and hits 88 miles per hour at the precise moment Doc plugs the rig back in. The lightning hits the DeLorean, and Marty blasts back to the future at last. October 26th, 1985. Marty actually set the clock a few minutes before he first left in order to warn Doc, but he's too late. When he finally gets to the mall, now Lone Pine Mall, he sees his friend get shot to pieces once again. He watches himself travel back to the past, then runs to check on Doc Brown, who's somehow still alive? Yes, universal integrity and scientific caution is important and all, but Doc figured, what the hell. He taped Marty's torn letter back together and wore a bulletproof vest. Marty goes home and passes out, but when he wakes up, he realizes everything is different. His parents are now healthy, wealthy, and have charming personalities to boot. His dad is a successful sci-fi author now, but the best part, Biff is basically his lackey, scrounging to wax George's car and everything. All seems well as Marty embraces his girlfriend Jennifer, until Doc Brown warps into the scene with the time machine. He hails from the future he's been exploring, warning Jennifer and Marty that their kids are in trouble. They pile into a car and take flight, because who needs roads? Blasting off into the future and leaving a bewildered Biff as witness. October 21st, 2015. In the far-distant sci-fi future year of 2015, our trio warps conveniently into the flow of traffic of an air highway. Understandably, Jennifer immediately starts freaking out, so Doc Brown sedates her and just kind of leaves her in an alley. Doc explains to Marty that his son, Marty Jr., will end up getting roped into a doomed robbery by Biff's grandson, Griff. To make matters worse, Marty's daughter Marlene will then attempt to break Marty Jr. out of prison. The plan is simple. Marty will pose as his son and refuse to take part in Griff's plan. Marty enjoys some luxuries of 2015, power laces, self-drying jackets, hoverboards, and 18 Jaws sequels before heading into an 80s-themed retro diner complete with Michael Jackson Max Headroom waitstaff. Marty Jr. shows up and Griff confronts him about the robbery, but Marty successfully pulls the old switcheroo and stands up to Griff. He says no, but Griff calls Marty a chicken and tries to hit him with a bat. Marty successfully evades the bullies as they crash into the courthouse, causing insane damages and leading to their arrest. With the future altered, Doc and Marty can go back to 1985. But the police find the unconscious Jennifer and just kind of dump her at her older self's home in Lyon Estates. Marty and Doc rush after her, but before they can intercept, Jennifer wakes up and finds herself spying on her future family. Turns out Marty's had a lifetime of misfortune. I mean, Needles just got him fired by calling him chicken, but it all stemmed from when Marty crashed into a Rolls Royce back in the 80s. He injured his hand, ruining his music career, and the Rolls Royce driver sued him into ruin. Jennifer soon runs into future Jennifer, and both faint out of shock. Could be worse. The whole time-space continuum could have imploded. When Doc and Marty arrive at Lyon Estates, they leave the DeLorean unattended to rescue Jennifer. But remember how Biff saw the DeLorean back in 1985? He's been suspicious ever since, especially after seeing two Marty Jr.'s in town. After eavesdropping on Doc and Marty, he follows the pair and hijacks their DeLorean in the short minutes it's unguarded, zipping to the past and back before anyone can notice. Marty and Doc return to the time machine and head back to 1985, vowing to destroy the thing to avoid any further messes. October 26th, 1985. We're back to the past, but things seem a bit off. Not only are there bars on Jennifer's windows, but Marty's house isn't Marty's house. Marty runs off into the dystopian hellscape that once resembled his neighborhood. Unarmed to the teeth, Mr. Strickland catches poor Marty on his property, but he's saved by a conveniently timed drive-by. How the hell is this 1985 so different? Well, Marty finds out as he stumbles into Courthouse Square, now completely in the shadow of a massive hotel casino owned by none other than Biff Tannen. According to the Biff Tannen Museum, Biff grew his fortune and empire through a number of well-placed sports bids over the past few decades. With his new power, he married his high school crush, Marty's mom, Lorraine. Biff's goons knock Marty out, and he wakes up next to a different version of Lorraine. She's been clearly abused and forced to get plastic surgery by her new husband. Biff roughs Marty up and forces Lorraine to submit by threatening to throw her kids in jail. But wait, where's George? Well, he's been dead for over a decade, and Biff killed him. Marty rushes to his father's tombstone and meets Doc, who is waiting for him. Back at the lab, Marty and Doc discuss how this dystopia came to be. Doc discovered part of Biff's cane in the DeLorean, along with a receipt for a sports almanac that Marty bought in 2015. Biff must have hijacked the DeLorean and given the almanac to his past self. Since the new 2015 has already been Biffified, they have to go back to the past and get the almanac before young Biff can. Marty heads straight to the casino to find out just when Biff first got his meat hooks on it. Sure enough, Biff boasts about how an old man gave it to him on November 12, 1955, and made him swear to keep it a secret. But he also warned him that a young man would one day ask about it. Well, that day has clearly come, so Biff's ready with his handgun. But Marty distracts Biff for like the 8th time in the trilogy, darts to the roof, and escapes with Doc in the flying DeLorean. Now they have to race back to November 12, 1955 to fix the past. Again, November 12th, 1955? It's almost as if it were the temporal junction point for the entire space-time continuum. On the other hand, it could just be an amazing coincidence. November 12th, 1955. Marty stalks Biff throughout the day and waits until he receives the almanac, but Can intercepts until future Biff thinks his mission is accomplished. Marty hops into the back of Biff's newly manure-free car as 50s Biff and future Biff come face-to-face in the front seat. 50s Biff pulls into his garage, and future Biff proves the almanac's power by accurately predicting the final score of a UCLA football game on the radio. Future Biff leaves, but Marty is trapped in the garage until 50s Biff heads off to the dance that evening, keeping the almanac close to the vest. Even at the dance, Marty just can't find the chance to nab it. Things get even trickier when Mr. Strickland confiscates the book from Biff. Marty slips into Strickland's office and under his desk, waiting for the perfect moment. But Strickland simply dumps the almanac in the wastebasket before leaving. Marty finally has his hands on it, but it's actually just the almanac cover over a girly magazine. Panicked, Marty needs to track down Biff and the real almanac fast. Thankfully, he knows exactly where he'll be. Knocked out in the parking lot by his father. Marty pretends to give Biff CPR in front of the crowd and lifts the almanac from his unconscious body. Home free, right? Wrong. Biff's goons chase Marty right into the gym. He evades them, but now they're waiting for the other Marty to get off stage. If the bullies beat him up, he'll never make it to the clock tower and a universe-destroying paradox will occur. So this movie's Marty traverses the stage's catwalk and knocks the bullies out with some sandbags in the nick of time. Now, all Marty has to do is meet Doc back on the roof. Biff, now conscious, confronts Marty outside of the gym. All our hero has to do is walk away. But when Biff calls him chicken, his feathers are ruffled. Marty turns to confront Biff but gets knocked out by himself. Biff, baffled at the two Calvin Kleins, notices the almanac in Marty's possession and flips his lid. He kicks Marty when he's down and makes off with the almanac once more. Once he comes to, Marty rushes to Doc and they make after the villain in the DeLorean. Marty tries to sneak up on Biff with his hoverboard, but the bonehead catches on and they start fighting for the almanac. While in the tunnel, Marty geniusly uses the walls to maneuver over the car and snatch the future-telling sports book. Too bad Biff is all ready to play chicken with his car. Marty scrambles to the other end of the tunnel as fast as he can, and thankfully gets a lift from Doc as Biff crashes into a truck full of manure. Again. Once they're outside of town, Marty burns the almanac as Doc precariously hovers above in the heavy rainstorm. Sure enough, the DeLorean gets struck by lightning and disappears. Marty assumes it was blown into a million pieces, but a Western Union representative shows up to deliver a mysterious letter from 1885. It's from Doc Brown, and it turns out he's still alive. To save Doc, Marty rushes to the only person who can help, Doc. But the shock of seeing Marty back from the future, again, causes poor Emmett to pass out in the street of Courthouse Square. November 13th, 1955. The next morning, Doc Brown wakes up, unaware that Marty dragged him home the night before. Marty shows him the letter, which explains how the bolt of lightning activated the DeLorean's flux capacitor, launching the good doctor back to the Wild West. Unfortunately, this also fried the capacitor, and the necessary parts to fix it won't be invented until 1947. Doc doesn't mind being trapped back in time. He's gleefully living out his fantasy as a blacksmith. He stowed the DeLorean in a nearby mine for Marty and Doc to uncover and repair in 1955. All they need to do is blow the DeLorean out of the mine and send Marty back to 1985 for everything to be solved. If only it was that simple. November 14th, 1955. Once he blasts the time machine out, Marty discovers the tombstone of Doc Brown himself. The tombstone reveals Doc was shot and killed by Buford Mad Dog Tannen over a matter of $80, a mere 6 days after writing the letter, September 7th, 1885. At least he apparently wooed a beloved Clara before he croaked. Marty decides to travel back to the Old West to rescue Doc before he meets this grisly fate. November 16th, 1955. With 50's Doc's blessing and the DeLorean all fixed up, Marty dresses up in Western garb and prepares to warp to the 19th century. Marty reaches 88 miles per hour, activating the time machine at a drive-in outside of town, which will surely be empty 70 years earlier. September 2nd, 1885. Well, of course, Marty warps right into the path of a group of armed Native Americans charging on horseback while being chased by cavalry. Marty manages to drive to safety and hide the DeLorean in a cave, but notices the fuel line was severed by an arrow. A black bear emerges from the cave, and Marty sprints away, tripping and knocking himself out at the property line of the Mcflys. Yep, his own ancestors. He awakens next to his great-great-grandma, Maggie Mcfly, who looks exactly like Lorraine. But wait, isn't this the dad's side of the family? Anyway, Marty states his name is Clint Eastwood, and they share an awkward dinner with Marty's great-great-grandfather, Seamus Mcfly. Maggie has her suspicions, but Seamus outfits his descendant with a hat and agrees to help him find his blacksmith friend, Doc. September 3rd, 1885. Marty heads into town and inquires at the saloon about the local blacksmith. Unfortunately, Biff's outlaw ancestor, Buford Mad Dog Tannen, shows up and doesn't like the cut of Marty's jib, or his goofy future clothes. Mad Dog shoots at Marty's feet, but Marty uses his Billie Jean Michael Jackson dance moves to evade and humiliate the outlaw. Yet another chase ensues. Mad Dog lassos a noose around Marty's neck, drags him around town, and hangs him in front of the courthouse. Luckily, Doc Brown shows up and shoots Marty free with a MacGyvered rifle. Mad Dog and Doc verbally spar in the street over Mad Dog's recently shoed horse. His horse's shoe broke, and Mad Dog put the horse down, so Mad Dog figures Doc owes him $80, even though Mad Dog never paid for the shoeing in the first place. Doc has a backbone, so he refuses to pay. Mad Dog vows to shoot him in the back. Marty shows Doc the photograph of his own tombstone, and Doc agrees to get the hell out of Dodge. The only problem is the DeLorean's cut fuel line. Sure, the flux capacitor still works, but the DeLorean can't hit 88 miles per hour without fuel. September 4th, 1885. Doc and Marty try to use the saloon's ultra-strong whiskey to power their time machine, but that only blows out the fuel injection manifold. They're running out of ideas when Doc suddenly has a brain blast. They can use a locomotive train in a long stretch of straight land near town to physically push the DeLorean to 88 miles per hour before it reaches Clayton's Ravine. Well, actually, it's currently still Shanash Ravine. The school teacher named Clara Clayton hadn't fallen in it yet and had the landmark named after her. Sure enough, as Doc and Marty are scoping the site out, Clara comes barreling out of control towards the ravine, and Doc races to her wagon to rescue the fair teacher, forever altering history. They look into each other's eyes and immediately fall in love. September 5th, 1885. The plan is set. Doc and Marty just need to wait for the next train to come through town at 8 a.m. on September 7th. In the meantime, might as well enjoy the town festivities at the Hill Valley Festival, where the infamous clock for the tower is being inaugurated. Doc is enjoying a dance with Clara when Mad Dog shows up to put a pistol in Doc's back. Strickland's ancestor thought he confiscated all of Tannen's gang's arms, but he missed this extra discreet one. Mad Dog is about to bury a bullet in Doc's back, but Marty uses a prototype frisbee to hit Buford's hand just in time, saving Doc's life. But before Marty can bail, Mad Dog pulls out Marty's trigger word. Well, sorta. He calls Marty Yella, and nobody calls Marty Yella, so he agrees to duel Buford 8 a.m. Monday morning. But that shouldn't be a problem. Marty will be well on his way back to the future by then. Unless the train is late, of course. September 6th, 1885. The next day, Marty takes a look at the tombstone photograph and the name is now blank. It seems like Doc's safe. But the gravestone is still there, so one of them could still be in danger. Doc considers staying back in the Old West with Clara and even taking Clara with them, but ultimately, he decides the responsible move is to return to his proper time without Clara. He goes to her door to explain that he's from the future, but Clara doesn't believe him and kicks Doc to the curb, breaking both of their hearts. Lost, Doc heads to the local saloon and holds a shot of whiskey as he tells the local patrons of his woes and of the future. September 7th, 1885. Marty wakes up alone and confused. Doc is nowhere to be found. He rushes back to the saloon and quickly convinces Doc to get a hold of himself. Doc finally takes that shot of whiskey, but unfortunately one shot floors him, and now he's drunk on his ass. The local barkeep whips up some disgusting wake-up juice and successfully revives the Doc, but all this commotion wasted far too much time. It's nearly 8 a.m. and Mad Dog is here for Marty's head. The future tombstone photograph now says Clint Eastwood, and that's Marty, remember? Marty and Doc try to slip out the back, but then Doc gets captured. Marty has to rescue his friend. First, he tries peace, throwing his cult peacemaker aside and offering to settle the affair like men. But Mad Dog pulls an Indiana Jones and shoots him anyway. Somehow, Marty stands up, unharmed. Mad Dog tries to punch him, but breaks his hand on the furnace face hidden under Marty's clothes. Marty socks the bewildered Buford, breaking the newly carved future tombstone and knocking him into a wheelbarrow of manure. The tombstone vanishes from the photo, and our pair rush to borrow the train for a science experiment. Meanwhile, Claire is on a one-way train to San Francisco, but overhears some men discussing the completely heartbroken man they met in the saloon the night before. She realizes that Doc Brown truly was in love with her and races back to her love. Doc and Marty successfully play Wild Bunch, taking the train for their science experiment and switching the track in time to meet up with the DeLorean. Marty chills in the DeLorean while Doc overheats the train's furnace, and they're well on their way to 88 miles per hour. Doc heads to the front of the train to join Marty, but suddenly, Clara jumps aboard the train via horseback. She confesses her love for sweet Emmett Brown, so he slowly works his way back to grab her. But if they're not in the DeLorean in time, the train will fly off the unfinished tracks into the ravine. Clara and Doc are running out of time, but Marty tosses them his trusty hoverboard so they can glide to safety, staying in the 19th century as Marty blasts back to the future for the final time. October 27th, 1985. Marty is finally back in the normal 1985 where he belongs, but the DeLorean stalls on the now complete train tracks. He barely gets away before a modern train smashes the DeLorean to bits. At least Doc got what he wanted with the destroyed time machine. Marty checks in on Jennifer. She's still passed out on the porch from the last movie, and she wakes up, confused by her crazy dream. Before Marty can explain himself on the way home, Needles pulls up in his truck and challenges Marty to a race, and calls him chicken. Marty is all ready to leave Needles in his dust, but makes the mature decision to bail. He's not stupid enough to race that asshole. Marty and Jennifer watch Needles speed ahead, narrowly avoiding a Rolls Royce that Marty surely would have hit. Just then, the You're Fired fax that Jennifer snagged from 2015 fades in her hands, and Marty's future looks bright. Jennifer and Marty go back to the DeLorean debris-laden tracks to reminisce when a different kind of train arrives out of nowhere. It's the Doc from the past. He's turned an old locomotive into a time machine and has been exploring the history of time with his wife Clara and his two sons Jules and, Vern. Doc gifts Marty the commemorative clock tower photo they took in 1885 before flying into the end credits, ready to embark on countless adventures with his family in a cartoon spin-off series. Great Scott, that was pretty heavy. But we hope we help make Marty Mcfly's adventures through time just a little bit clearer. What timelines would you like to see us tackle next here at Cinematica? Just let us know in the comments below and blast to the future and see if we listened. And hey, if you don't have a time machine, you can always subscribe to Cinematica for more timelines just like this one. I've been your host Marcus. Thanks for watching.